All right. So let's go straight into what it is that I'm here to talk about. So I went back once again to listen to the song Hail Mary by Tupac, because this is actually something that I'm going to be doing while creating the videos for this series that I've called Tupac and the Spiritual Side of Music We Ignore. I'm going to go back and re-listen to some of the songs that I used to enjoy when I was a teenager and a huge fan of Tupac. And, I really have to thank God, first of all, because I would not be able to make these videos without his help. And I mean it, literally, really. As I have decided to give my life to Christ, one of the things that I've noticed happening in my life is that, and in so many different aspects and areas in my life, he is revealing a lot of things that I was unable to see before. Even while reading the Bible now, the words, when you read the Bible, sometimes when you don't really have the Holy Spirit in your life, active in your life as a result of sin or just unbelief or whatever it is, it's just like reading words on paper. They don't really make sense. And the fact that they don't make sense sometimes get on your nerves, and obviously makes it even gets to the point where you start to think, how can anyone believe any of this stuff? These religious people are really just insane, But this time around, having given my heart to Christ, when I read the Bible now, the words become alive, and I start to... I had this thought, right? Because I was one of those unbelievers that used to question religious people a lot, like, how come you guys believe this crazy stuff, in the Bible and stuff? And I have come to the realization, because I have become one of those, I guess, not necessarily religious, I don't like the word religious, but you know what I mean. I have become one of those Christians that, now obviously take the Bible very seriously and stuff. So what I've come to realize is that you do not read the Bible like you read a book, a novel, or even a historical book, because you don't read it to learn what happens in the stories. The Bible is like a map of the human soul in a way. When you really have the Holy Spirit, and this is the thing that is beautiful about God, is because you cannot cheat. You cannot cheat. The Bible will only speak to you if you truly are connected with the Holy Spirit. It is then that the words are going to jump out of that paper and become alive, because once again, you don't read it in order to discover what happens in the book. The book is about you. And when you read those words and you are connected to God, via, the Holy Spirit, I think it's called the Rema, I think, The Logos is pretty much just, the words on paper or the word, and the Rema is the revelation that I suppose that takes place when you really have the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit is talking to you as you read the Bible. It's not a book like any other. It is God's word, indeed. But for you to be able to understand that, believe that, experience that, you need God's help. The things of God are not like Satan's. Satan likes to, God hides his most precious things so that, it can't just be exploited by anybody that comes, along with any intentions. You have to approach the Bible with the right spirit if you want it to speak to you. Another thing also that I've noticed is that, last year I tried giving my life to God, but my heart was not in the right place. The main reason really why I even went to God, is because I wanted something from Him. And already there, you won't get very far. God has to be the most important thing in your life. And then, because that's the right posture, that's the right attitude, that's the right perspective, then you will start seeing His hand. You cannot trick Him into giving you whatever you want and then turning your back and going back to the world and doing whatever it is that you were doing before. I felt like I just needed to say that. And for those to whom it will make sense, good, and if it doesn't make sense to you, maybe it's not your time yet. But, yeah. So, I went back to listen to the song Hail Mary. And this time around, just like with the Bible, right? It's as if, because, I'm not listening to these songs to enjoy them once again. I'm not a fan of worldly music like that anymore, I'm listening to them to understand what it is what is the content of this music? And when I say content, I'm not talking about the sound or the lyrics. Because as I said in the previous video, music is not just sounds or lyrics. Music is spiritual. There is a reason why music has the ability to change the atmosphere of an entire room. It is more than just sound. Music can change your mood instantly. It can change you into a different person by the second than you were just a few moments before this song or this music started playing. It reaches very deep inside of us and turns us into whatever it is that it wants, really. Whatever the spirit is in that music is who you will become if you agree with it. And obviously, the more and more you agree with a certain type of music, if it's hip-hop, and that's your favorite type of music, and you listen to it every single day, consume it every single day like food, you will become like, you will adopt the spirit that is in the music. You will start talking, walking, thinking, living like some of these artists that make this music, because you are consuming what they're feeding you without really knowing what that actually means. Because once again, I'm not just talking about sound and lyrics. That's not all that you're consuming. You're consuming the spirit behind the music. So as I was saying, I listened to that song, Hail Mary, once again, and the song really, it became alive. It came, because just like I said, I was a huge fan of Tupac, so I've probably listened to that song in the past 1,000 times or more. There was a time in my life in which I would listen to Tupac every single day. And I said this in the last video as well, and this was one of my favorite songs that Tupac had made. So I know this song very well. But this time it was very different. And I'm talking about, listening to the song even after making the last video. There was something that I just felt the need to go back to it. Like there was something that I missed. And, indeed, there was. That song came alive, and as I said, and for me, the most interesting part of that song, and the one that really touched my spirit, unlike maybe most people, is the intro. And when I say the intro, I really mean the first seconds of that song. When the song comes on, and I also said this in the last video, excuse me for, pardon me for, saying that as much as I, and maybe, you should probably go and, check out that video that I made. It's called, just like this one, Tupac and the spiritual side of music, but it's that one is part 1 and this one is part 2. This is pretty much a continuation, on that topic and stuff. So just like I said in the last video, I played that song again, and once again, the entire atmosphere of my room changed instantly. And when I heard, this time around, Tupac say what he said in the intro of that song, Cavalian this, Illuminati, all through your body. The blow's like a 12-gauge shotty. Feel me, come with me, Hail Mary, one quick see. And listen to this. And God said he should send his one begotten son to lead the world into the ways of the man. Follow me. Eat my flesh and my flesh. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. I lie to you not. I lie to you not. When I heard that this time, I realized, and you will call me crazy. You will call me crazy. You will laugh, and you will probably you stop this video and just be like, yeah, this guy, he's insane. When I heard that this time around, especially now, because by the way, I am fasting, so I am very sensitive. For those who know, if you know, when you're fasting, you're very sensitive to spiritual things. So put this song on, and Tupac said what he said in that intro, and I'm telling you, I heard the voice of Satan. I heard the voice of Satan. Satan was speaking through Tupac. Not in the whole song necessarily, but that intro, that was not Tupac speaking. And I froze, and in my heart, I kind of grieved because I was like, man, this is really the stuff that we are consuming in this music. The music industry is satanic. But see, there are a lot of things like that that we say, right? But we say it simply because it makes sense, obviously when you watch certain music videos and some of the things that the artists say, it's especially today, it's very easy to even come to that conclusion. It's not like I'm the first to say this. It's not news, really. Everybody knows that that's the case in a way. You don't have to make a whole documentary to prove this point. You can just, it's right there in front of our faces today. But there's a difference between that and experiencing it live. Hearing the voice of Satan speaking to you through one of these artists. But and here's what I realized as well. And these are things that only God can reveal to you. It made me think. One of the things about Tupac was that he used to consume, just like a lot of these, rappers. He used to consume a lot of marijuana. He was a drinker as well, but I don't think that Tupac was a drunk. But he definitely was a heavy smoker. He smoked a lot of weed. And one of the things about weed, and I guess just drugs and even alcohol, these things in general, is that when you consume them, you open yourself up spiritually. You invite, well, it's not necessarily that you invite them, like you do it consciously or that is your intention. But whether those are your intentions or not, you invite or just simply open yourself up to spirits, to the spiritual world. You become obviously more sensitive to certain things, and people think that that's just the brain or whatever it is that is going on, physiologically or whatever, that it's just all scientific. No, it's spiritual. It is spiritual. That's why you have to be very careful about drugs and alcohol. You have no idea who you open and what you open yourself up to. When you do that, anything can come and inhabit you and speak through you and make you do its bidding. See, here's the thing. I don't even think, and this is just what I think because I don't know, I don't even think that Tupac himself knew that was Satan speaking through him. That all that weed made him, open himself up to the point that it was the man himself. Not just, these demons. And, when it comes to some other songs, yes, definitely. It's just, you saw some demons and stuff. But this time around, I was very sure of it. That was Satan speaking through the man. And God said he should send his one begotten son to lead the wild into the ways of the man. Follow me. Eat my flesh, and my flesh. A few days ago, I was doing some research on the internet and I came across some of the, on Google Images, I came across some of the images of the logos of some of the biggest record companies in the music industry. Some of them were, like Columbia Records, for example. The logo of Columbia Records is clearly inspired by the Eye of Horus. And I think they even call it the walking eye, the logo of Columbia Records, or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. And I also came across an image of the logo of Atlantic Records, I think it's called. And on that logo, there is a 666. It's right there. It is right there in the open. Telling you what really goes on in that music industry. I cannot tell you for sure that every artist that signs a record deal knows that they are, at the time in which they do it, and maybe slightly even after, that they sell their souls to Satan and serve him now. But that's obviously what happens. I was listening to a podcast, and some guy that, he didn't sign a record deal, but he was about to. And he was speaking about, his experiences. And he said that what happens in the beginning stages, because, he was obviously around some artists and, in that type of environment. And he said that one of the things that he noticed is that after an artist signs a record deal, it's not like they are brutally and, suddenly introduced to the whole thing that industry is really about. It starts very slowly. They slowly try to seduce this artist that just signed the record deal or is about to sign the record deal into. They start doing things to seduce them slowly into everything that Satan is about. One of the things that he said is that, they will send people like stylists and stuff to kind of, I don't know if it's to try to, and here if it's a male artist, I'm talking about a male stylist, for example, to approach this upcoming rapper in a sexual way. And they will start, giving you more drinks, giving you more drugs to consume. And I think it's to entrap you. Many of the artists, that, including Tupac, at some point during their careers, it always, starts to look like, and they even try to express this themselves, trying to tell us, the public, that they are trapped, that this music industry is not what they thought it was, or that we, the fans, think that it is. And obviously they cannot explain everything and tell us everything. That's probably about all that they can say without getting into serious trouble. They themselves are trapped. Because I don't think that for some of them, and I'm saying obviously some of them, that if they knew what really went on in that industry, that they would sign the contract. I mean, look how many of them end up. That's not, the sort of life that you necessarily want to lead. That's not the way you want to be remembered. Yes. You signed the contract initially because you want the fame, you want the cars, you want the clothes, you want the glory, the power, whatever it is, the money. But Many of them signed it because they thought that that's all that it came with. That was everything. That was the beginning and the end of it. No. This is Satan's playground. And nothing that you get from him is free. You have to pay for it. And because Satan is the master of deception, he will deceive you into signing the contract so that once it's too late, he can devour you and turn you into a slave. But at that point, you don't have a choice anymore. You have already sold your soul. This is my belief, only me, when it comes to Tupac Shakur. And obviously I'm speaking about him because, as I said in the last video as well, Tupac was my favorite artist. So I know a bit more about him than some of these other rappers, but I am making these videos I'm only using him as an example, but really I'm trying to, at the same time, I am speaking about Tupac, but also about the music industry as a whole and all of the artists in it. Not all, but in general. I don't believe personally that Tupac was a bad man. I believe that Tupac had a good heart, Yes, he was young and he was wild, as we all know. Obviously, even fans of him cannot say, and I was a big fan of him. None of us thought he was perfect, that's for sure. Even though we worshipped him. But, one of the things that you definitely knew about the man is that he was very courageous. You can say that Tupac had, unlike many other rappers, you can tell that there was some integrity to this man. Even at that young age, he tried to lead in his own twisted way, unfortunately, because, and this is some of the sad things about Black America, is because integrity for the young black male at that time, and maybe even today, honestly, the youth is pretty much destroyed. People don't care about integrity. They will even laugh at you today if you even mention that word when it comes to the music industry, entertainment and all of that. It's about money today. Today people willingly give their souls up to Satan. And they do it with pride, But in Tupac tried to, he described himself as, and obviously this is me paraphrasing, as a rapper that wanted to be a voice for the young black male that was misunderstood, forgotten about by society, rejected. That he stood on something. He believed that he could represent the black male and be a voice for him. And maybe this is the result of him or his family having roots and in the Black Panthers. Tupac wasn't just anybody. He was the son of a Black Panther. So maybe in his own way, he wanted to use his rap career to try to kind of, in a new way, or in his own way, continue with that message, with that ideology. Only in the 90s version of it, maybe. But he couldn't do it fully now, could he? We all know what America is about, and you're not about to come here and sign this record contract in this very satanic industry and try to help the black male or anybody in any way. If this industry is about anything, it's about destroying your spirit, using these artists and these well, there's also Hollywood, you need to understand, but about that. But let's stick with the music industry. They use hip-hop music and rap music to advertise a lifestyle, a way of thought, a way of life that ultimately, if fans of these people adopt these things as well, would lead them down the wrong path and would lead down a path of self-destruction. When you idolize someone and worship someone like we worship Tupac, and Tupac, spoke about Alizé and Cristal and all this alcohol, you will end up Hennessy, as well. That was the big one, even when it came to Tupac. You will start drinking. When Tupac said, I'll smoke weed till I die, or I'll get high till I die, you will start smoking because you worship Tupac, you idolize Tupac. You want to be like him. But see, the music industry knows that. And they know it more than the artists even know it. Because this industry has been around for much longer than any of these artists have been alive. And the agenda of this industry is a lot darker than we think that it is. They use these artists for their influence. But it's because they want to use them to destroy you. They want to present these artists in a certain way so that you are seduced by them. But because you are seduced by them and are ready to do anything that they do or say, they can destroy an entire generation of young people. But because music is spiritual, they are able to turn the heat up to 100. And get into your spirit, affect you spiritually through this music. I even forgot my point. I was saying, I really believe that Tupac was one of those artists that at some point were starting to resist the music industry. In however way this took place behind the scenes. I think that, at some point he was trapped and realized that he was trapped and tried to resist doing some of the things that you have to do once you sign the contract. Once you sell your soul to Satan, it is now time to submit. It is now time to pay for this fame, to pay for this money, to pay for this influence, cars, girls. And once the industry started to see that this guy is kind of hard-headed, because the man was courageous. I think we all know about that. And that was also one of the reasons why many of us that were young, even older people, looked up to him. He spoke from his heart. Tupac would say what he believed a lot of the times. He would say things that you could tell, there is no way that this, was going well behind the scenes with some of the executives in that industry. This guy thinks that he's going to sign this contract and say whatever he wants. Think whatever, well, you can think whatever you think, but you are going to do whatever we ask you to do. That's why he started having all these legal problems. And once he went to jail, none of the music, they weren't ready. They weren't willing to put up the money to get him out of jail. Yes, Suge Knight came along and paid, I think, $1 million or something like that, right? Or $10 million, to get him out of jail. But that's a different story. He was an artist under Interscope, I think, right? And Interscope wasn't willing to put up the money to get Tupac out of jail. And I think it was based on the fact that this guy was hard-headed. But don't get confused by what I'm saying. I'm not saying these things to big up Tupac. Because after all, just like I said in the song Hail Mary, whether the man knew it or not, and I do believe that at the end of, by the end of the life, when he signed with Death Row Records, Tupac changed, Yes, I understand that he was much more angry than he had been before as a result of having been shot 5 times. But I think that after he signed to Death Row, that whole I'm going to be the voice of the black male thing went, that was, he did away with that. He didn't care anymore. And I think even, I don't know if it was a documentary that I saw, but somebody said that after Tupac got shot 5 times, yes, just like I said, he changed, but he was hurt because he didn't believe that he would be attacked that way physically by one of his own people, the very same people that he wanted to be a voice for, that he wanted to represent, that he wanted to defend in every way that he could through music or whatever it is that he was doing. Once that happened, he said, okay, to hell with the whole thing. You didn't hear any more records like Brenda Got a Baby or Keep Your Head Up. Tupac's view of women became very dark, worldly, like it is today and it's been for a long time. And when it came to the young black male, that message was gone as well. Death Row Records is really when, the whole business of selling your soul, that's when, Tupac really gave in to the system, to the industry. That's when he really agreed to become an agent and a servant of Satan. Whereas before, he probably resisted a little bit more and got in trouble for it and went to jail for it in a way. Because everybody knows that, Tupac wasn't guilty of rape, really. I don't think any of us believe that. In a way, he was probably set up or whatever happened, but I don't think that the man was guilty. But once he signed with Suge Knight, it was over. It was a whole new version of Tupac. That Tupac is kind of the one that I'm really speaking about here when it comes to this music industry. Because that Tupac is the one that, released songs like Hail Mary, through which I really heard the voice of Satan come out. But you know what is strange? Even before, right? Tupac was always warning us that indeed he had sold his soul. Even before Death Row Records and going to jail and that whole thing. So it's always connected. Tupac was telling us in the song So Many Tears, and I also talked about this in the last video, that he was having demonic dreams, that he even said it verbatim, in the song. Now that my soul is deleted. Those are the words that he used, in that song. But he also said that, he was having demonic dreams and that he would have visions of his enemies, killing him in his sleep. And, things like that. And I also watched an interview of, I don't know if it's Tupac's cousin or something, but his name is Mopreme Shakur. And he said that Tupac sometimes or often would wake up screaming. He would be sleeping, in the studio or wherever he was. And he would wake up screaming because he was having these, like he says in the records, demonic dreams. Dreams and visions of demons, getting hold of him. All these dark things. Or, people coming after him to kill him. And visions of hell. All of this is in the music, but none of Tupac's fans, even his biggest fans, talk about that even in the least. And that's what happened when you're bewitched by the music and you worship these artists. You won't pay attention to the things that you should pay attention to. In fact, for you to really know the contents of that music, you have God has to reveal it to you. God has to reveal it to you. You cannot be a big fan, and know what that music is really about, what its contents are. No, because it's too late. You've already been seduced by Satan. He's already got you. It's too late. You will dance to the music. You will rap along to the music, which some of those lyrics are spells. Spells that when you repeat them again and again, they activate something in your life. Some of the music that, some of these rappers make today, some of the lyrics don't even make sense. But it is so catchy. The music is so good that you cannot help yourself but be seduced. And it gets to a point where you are so seduced and this has become so much a part of your life that you are ready to defend it and call guys like me crazy or write crazy things in the comments because these artists are your gods, and that is what Satan wants. But here's the question, and here, just to prove my point, what positive things have these artists done for you to worship them that way? Truly, let's try to be a little bit practical about this. No, don't tell me that they've made music that you can dance to, that you enjoy. That's not enough. Since you have started listening to hip-hop and all of these rappers, what have you gotten from it? Except to be encouraged to start living a sort of lifestyle that has destroyed you, or that will destroy you, that will eventually turn you into a weed addict, a drug addict, an alcoholic, a violent person, a thief, a street individual, and end up in jail, or end up with 30 baby mamas, or whatever it is. Very, to live a life without honor, to have a million tattoos, which is also blood sacrifice. Because we need to understand that some of these things, there is always a connection to the occult or spiritual things. When you drink and you smoke, you open yourself up spiritually to spirits. Some people don't understand why it is that when they drink or when they smoke weed, that they start thinking things and doing things that they never have before, feeling things that they never have before. And sometimes, you may even find yourself saying things or coming up with things where that was not you. It's like if something came over you, in you, and did it or said it through you. It's very spiritual. It's very spiritual. I will reveal this to you. I am an artist myself in my own way, and I suppose I can prove this to you just by letting you know that everything that you see, visually when it comes to this video, the pictures and how everything is set up visually is my work. And just the whole channel, the whole design, every work that, is visual is my work. And I've worked on some, different creative projects and stuff. But at some point in my life, before I gave my life to God, I was really struggling with depression and was really lost in my life. And I was never one to smoke weed or drink alcohol. That was never my thing. That was more from some things that, my friends did. I was always around it to some extent because, my friends were into those type of things, but not me. Drugs were not really my thing. But there was a period in my life in which I started consuming edibles. Yes, it is weed, but, it's edibles, you eat them. And those are actually a lot stronger. But, I was introduced to them almost by mistake. Some guy was just like, hey, you want to try this? And, I tried it and I got really high and stuff. But after that, because one thing that I realized, by consuming edibles as a result of being an artist is that creatively, edibles, when I was in that state, of being high, edibles, my creativity really exploded. I'm already a creative person, but whenever I consumed edibles, I was able to come up with things that I know that wasn't me. I felt like and this is actually what was happening. I was receiving signals from the spiritual world. I mean, from the invisible world, wherever spirits dwell. Some of the ideas I came up with, some of the designs, some of the things I would think, some of the ideas I would have, I know that wasn't me. I would only be able to come up with those things when I was consuming those edibles. And, this is not news. Some of these artists tell you. They tell you that they smoke the amount of weed that they smoke because it helps them come up with the songs that they make. The drugs that they consume helps them be creative. They almost cannot be that creative without the drugs. But see, this is what you need to understand. In order for them to come up with that music, they have to communicate with spirits. That's really what that means. Because when they are themselves, in their right mind, when they are themselves, fully themselves, they cannot make the music that you enjoy. That music does not come from them. They get it from another source. A source that they can only communicate with and receive these signals or these songs or these ideas, these lyrics from, when they are under the influence of marijuana or drugs or pills or alcohol. This brings me back to the song Hail Mary once again. That was not Tupac speaking. That was not him. Once again, I have to tell you that I was a humongous, huge fan of Tupac. I worshipped him. Tupac was my idol. I've heard many of his songs. And I never felt what I felt in the intro of that song, Hail Mary, specifically. This might have, it's not like, lately I've went back to listen to all of his songs, but in that intro, not the entire song, in that intro, when Tupac says what he says, that is Satan speaking. That's why we have to be very careful with this music. The music that this music industry creates. That music is Satan's music, whether the artist that makes it knows it or not. One way or the other, Satan will show his face. He will speak through the artist. Or if he doesn't do that, the music video will do that with all those weird symbols. You are consuming Satan's stuff. It's not like I can blame anybody that does not believe what I say. I was one of you. I was one of you. And some things you won't believe them until you experience them yourself. But if you are that sort of person, which I was, you will go through a lot of trouble, pain, tragedies, and confusion, loss, shame. Because you're hard-headed. You will not listen to advice. You have to go through something to believe that there are consequences to your actions, to your negligence, to however it is that you decide to live your life. Music is spiritual. As I said in the last video as well, I am African, and in Africa, there are cultures that use music to invoke spirits. Because music is so powerful that I believe it stands right at the door. It stands right between this realm that we are able to experience directly, through touch, through sight, through sound, smell, whatever it is, and the one that we cannot see, touch, smell, or experience directly. It stands right between the invisible realm and the visible one, where we dwell in. That's how powerful it is. Music is spiritual. That's why it's so powerful. That's why it reaches down so deep inside of you. When you dance, it's not an intellectual exercise. You don't do it because you want to. It's the music doing it to you. You follow the music. But be careful about that. Because since we don't fully know what music actually is, we don't know all the dangers that comes with it. Especially if you don't believe that music is spiritual, you are going to be one of its greatest victims, or one of the greatest victims of this music industry that we feed, with our money, our spirit, even, when you go to a concert, when it comes to, these artists in this music industry, that's one of the most dangerous things you can do. Most of these artists are into weird rituals. They make sacrifices to spiritual entities. They worship Baal. Some of us don't understand why people like Diddy, for example, Sean Diddy Combs, was having sex with all these other male artists. We think that was something that was happening because, Diddy was just a sexual beast or something like that. No, Diddy was not crazy. Diddy was not a sexual beast. He wasn't doing it just because he wanted to sexually take advantage of all these other male artists. Diddy did it because he had to do it. That was his job. He was a gatekeeper. It's a position that he inherited or got from someone else in that industry, because that industry has existed way before Diddy was alive. I said this in the last video as well, but I feel like I have to say it again. But most of us on the outside are not meant to understand these things. To understand that some of the things that these guys do, and Diddy has been around for a long time, but it's only now that we start, figuring out, what he was about, or the things that he used to do. That's how it functions. They have to hide what actually goes on in that industry. Because if you were to know, you wouldn't listen to these guys, because you would fully understand that they serve Satan. And doing the things that Diddy used to do with these artists is how you serve Satan. It is what you do once you sign the record contract. Once you sell your soul. It doesn't matter how masculine these artists look in the music videos or on social media. No. That's what they do to seduce you. But in the background, behind the scenes, they have to do what Satan asked them to do. You cannot get into that music industry and be successful without being obedient to the devil. No. There's something that needs to be said about being an artist. You will often find out that some of the most creative and best artists, whether they're painters, filmmakers, singers, rappers, actors, so on and so forth, some of the best ones were the ones that had experienced a lot of trauma in their lives. And trauma is also one of those things that opens you up spiritually as well. One of the unfortunate effects of trauma is that spiritually you become vulnerable. And when it comes to Tupac as well, I believe that Tupac was someone that this may not be obvious, because the man was, seemed very courageous, masculine, all of that. But I definitely believe that Tupac had gone through a lot of trauma in his life. There was a reason why, when the man was very angry, that he was able to, Tupac's rage was very palpable. A lot of, Tupac's fans became fans of Tupac because of how passionate he was. He wasn't just a rapper, he was an actor as well, and a great one. He understood emotions. He understood trauma, pain. And you can sense that in his music. And I think that's one of the things that made him powerful, as an artist. But see, Satan likes trauma. I watched, and this is a pretty, famous interview. It's the I'm thinking about the interview that Tupac gave, with I think it was MTV, right? With the white girl called Tabitha something, and they were on some beach in Los Angeles. And Tupac said it very quickly, and then changed the subject. But I thought that was very interesting. And this is also one of the things that many of Tupac's fans don't even bring up. Tupac said that he was abused, or that he experienced a lot of abuse when he was growing up. Oh, now I remember. I think the interviewer brought that up. And Tupac, said, yeah, that's true, but he changed the subject. But we don't think about that really when it comes to Tupac, right? We don't understand that all of that pain in the music, all of that passion, all of these things that we appreciate from these artists come from a dark place. No, not just a dark place that's just, something that can be used, to create this music that we love. No, from a dark place that, that lives inside and is very much alive inside that artist. I was watching and listening to this podcast, and I'm not going to mention who it was, but this person said, and it's very sad because it really reflects how we think, as it shows, how we think as fans sometimes. He was speaking about an artist who he had noticed had changed their life around, and was in a very happy place in their life, and a lot of positive things was happening, and you can tell that this artist is not as depressed as they used to be. They're very happy now and in a good place. But what he said is that, unfortunately, he believed that the fact that this artist is now in a good, positive, and happy place, it means that the music is now going to suffer. Because artists usually make their best music when they are in a dark and terrible place, when they are depressed, when they are heartbroken, so on and so forth. Satan thinks the same way. So in that way, we agree with his thinking. Satan likes broken people. Those are the ones that he can manipulate the most. Those are the ones that he can seduce into coming into that music industry and turn them into whatever it is that he wants. Yes, he will give you fame. He will give you money. He will give you the girls, the whatever it is that you initially come into that industry for. But eventually you're going to have to pay the price. And that's how you become a victim of Diddy and things like that. But worse things happen in that industry. Worse things that if anybody was to say them, to say what actually happens in that industry, we wouldn't believe. People barely believe that to be successful, really successful in that industry, you have to make sacrifices. You have to sacrifice people.
children, family members. You have to spill blood. Satan likes blood. That's his thing. That's what demons love. When these artists have 1 million tattoos, that's a form of blood sacrifice. But what's also interesting about tattoos is that, back in the days, whenever, well, this wasn't the case in every, country or, wherever, slavery was taking place. But there would be instances in which, slaves would be branded so that people would know what family or who was the owner of the slave. They would brand the slave with symbols, maybe to symbolize what category, this slave, fell in, what it is, what service it was that he was meant to, that he was trained for or whatever. Or with the initials of the owner. Satan, in the same way, brands his slaves. Many of these artists, and especially back in the day, today it probably changed, but I think it still happens to some extent. Before the person signs the contract, they have no tattoos almost. But after they sign the contract, a few years later, they have all these tattoos. And you're like, wait, what happened? And unfortunately, today tattoos have become so much part of the culture that even what I'm saying right now is hard to believe, because it's like, yeah, but I have a friend that has tattoos. Yes, but once again, where did that come from? Just 50 years ago, it wasn't the whole country that had tattoos. Who were the people that we looked up to that started doing that? It was the musicians. It was the musicians, especially when it comes to hip-hop culture. People follow the artists. That music is spiritual, man. That's why we worship these guys like gods. It's a spiritual thing. Before I started listening to Tupac, I was a pretty happy person. But after I started listening to him, and this happened without even me really noticing, after I started listening to him, I started becoming really depressed. And I was depressed for a long time in my life. I really struggled with depression for quite some time. But I really believe that Tupac's music played a huge role. And when it comes to depression, just listen to Tupac's music. Listen to the lyrics. Many of the things that he will say, a lot of the vibe of that music as well is, it's not sad. It has a very heavy suicidal spirit in that music. There's a suicidal spirit in the music of Tupac. One of the major songs that had, at the same time, a suicidal, the music, the song was suicidal. And here I'm referring to the spiritual component, the spiritual side of the music. It was suicidal, demonic, because, it has elements. He talks about selling his soul. He talks about where his career is headed, because he already knows that he's going to sacrifice himself to become an even bigger name in hip-hop music or in music in general, to die as a legend. He already knows that that's going to happen because he paid the price for it. He knows it's coming, and he tells you in the music. All of that is in that song. And the sound of that song, the spirit of that song is almost akin to Hail Mary. But while Hail Mary it's dark, but in a different way, So Many Tears is dark in a suicidal way. I became very suicidal. In the times in my life when I listened to Tupac the most, that was the time in my life in which I was the most suicidal. I was depressed, negative about, everything in my life. And when I listen back to these songs, I'm like, no wonder. Listen to what I was consuming. And that's what I meant. When you see, it's not just the sound and the lyrics. It's the spirit you consume. What that spirit feeds you through the music.
On that note, actually, speaking about Tupac, predicting his death. Because that's one of the things that we like to play around with as fans of Tupac and Biggie as well. And I'm going to get to Biggie in a second. Is, the prophetic side of Tupac when it comes to his death. As fans of him, and I was a fan of him, you will come across a lot of people that like to flirt with that idea. But I really mean flirt. It's not that they fully believe it, because if they were to fully believe it, they would understand that what Tupac did is actually, what he actually did was sacrifice himself, his life, for fame, for this legendary status that he got, especially after he died. Because the alive Tupac and the dead Tupac are not the same thing in terms of rank in the music industry and in hip-hop. Now, as I said, right, they like to flirt with that. But what you don't understand is that is the truth. Yes, it's not that, Tupac was interested because it looked like he knew he was going to die. No, the man knew. The man knew. Just like Biggie knew that he was going to die, because his first album, he told you, he named the album after that. Ready to Die. He is telling you where this is headed. He is telling you where it's headed. It's not by mistake. We need to know that these artists in that music industry, they are not just rappers. They are not just entertainers. They are witches. And I mean that word literally. I mean it. They are witches. They are into strange things that when we look at them on the surface, it might look interesting, intriguing, seducing, but we don't know what it is that we're looking at or witnessing. When someone sacrifices himself, gives his own life up like that, tells you that he's going to die in an industry like that one, that is very deep in the occult. When it comes to the logos, you can clearly see that here, Columbia Records is the Eye of Horus. There's a 666 on the logo of Atlantic Records. All these weird symbols in the music videos, in the songs. What do you think these guys are? They're not just artists. It goes beyond that. There are things that you need to become, that you need to do behind the scenes in order to attain the level of influence that you have in the music world, with your music. Your music has to have
a certain kind of power behind it. Otherwise, it will not work. You will not sell. It's not just enough to have a good beat. It's not just enough to have good lyrics. That doesn't do anything anymore. The spiritual part has to be right as well. You know, there was this, and he was an older gentleman. His name was Papa G. He used to work for Death Row Records, and he said that at some point, you know, he was having a conversation with Tupac, and Tupac told him that he didn't see himself living past the age of 25. Now, he gave that specific age, 25 years old, which is actually when Tupac died. And, you know, Papa G said that, you know, when Tupac told him that, Papa G told Tupac, to stop talking like that. He didn't want to hear that from Tupac. Obviously, I think he loved Tupac. You know, he worked with him, and they probably had a close relationship. But just like us, his fans, that would hear Tupac talk about his death so many times, foreshadowing it, we just, went along. We just enjoyed the music. And for people that were close to him at the time, when he was alive and talking like that, they didn't take it seriously. They didn't know that Tupac meant what he was talking about. That even his close ones didn't know. That Tupac knew that, he had given up his own life for this rap thing. Listen, the song I Ain't Mad At You, right, has a music video. And in that music video, Tupac not only foreshadows his death, but the very way in which he is going to die. He shows it in the music video. And, I watched an interview by the actor Bokeem Woodbine, he actually, worked on the set of, he's in the music video, he was one of the actors in the music video and worked with Tupac. And I think he played the role of Tupac's friend in that music video or whatever. And he said that he found it very strange that after he had worked on the set, of the music video with Tupac for the song I Ain't Mad At You, the music video was not, after they finished, the shooting it, the music video was not coming out. Like, he had to wait for a long time, longer than it usually takes for music videos to come out at the time, we're in the mid-90s here. But he thought, okay, at some point, because the music video was not coming out, he thought, okay, maybe they didn't like it or there was something wrong with the video, and, they just discarded it. But he said that what happened, and to his surprise, a few days after Tupac died, here comes that music video on MTV. And I think it aired like 5 days. It first aired like 5 days after Tupac died. The whole thing was planned. Oh my God. Same thing for Biggie Smalls. See, we don't take these things seriously. We think that, and for those that take it seriously, they take it seriously only in the sense because, it's a conspiracy. It's interesting. But they don't know that when you see things like this, the conclusion that you should come to is that you should stop listening to that music. Because these guys are involved in things that are way beyond. Why did Tupac have to give up his life? Why did Biggie have to give up his life for this rap thing? Why? That's not normal. These guys come out the gate with a plan that leads towards death. In the song So Many Tears, which is one of those songs that I'm telling you, sometimes you can tell. I mean, obviously, if you're not close to God, you can't do it. You can't do it. These are things that the Spirit of God has to reveal to you. I make these videos as a warning. I was a fan of those guys. I don't listen to them anymore. That's over with, man. I'm following Christ. Do not listen to that music. It's satanic. As I was about to say, in the song So Many Tears, Tupac tells you, I think verbatim, he says, my every move is a calculated step to bring me closer to embrace an early death. It's right there. In the song So Many Tears, the lyrics are right there. Tupac is telling you where this is headed. Biggie Smalls names his first album Ready to Die, telling you where this rap thing is headed for him, what the plan is. Because those two men, they wanted more than just a rap career. They wanted to become gods. That's different than just, being fame, coming in to the music industry, having a little bit of fame and, maybe, at some point being respected as one of the best MCs and, but your time comes and goes. No, it's different for Tupac and Biggie. Tupac and Biggie, 30 years after their deaths, we still talk about them like they are here with us today. In part because they died. But what we don't understand is that there's a spiritual side to this as well. It's not just that their deaths were intriguing. No. We have been bewitched by their music. By them, with the help of the music industry, and obviously Satan, which is the ultimate guy that they serve, because they paid the price with their own lives. That's what Jesus did on the cross. And Satan loves to copy what God does. And Jesus, had to die for our sins. And he has much more influence, much more fame today after his death than at the time in which he was alive. Satan loves to mock God. The album cover for the last album that came out just a month after Tupac died. What is on the album cover? It's Tupac crucified on a cross. But you're still not going to believe what I'm saying. It's satanic. In that song, Hail Mary, I heard the voice of Satan. I promise you, that was not Tupac speaking. That was Satan speaking through the man. Machiavellian this, Illuminati, all through your body. The blow is like a 12-gauge shotty. Feel me? Come with me. Hail Mary. Run quick, see. And God said he should send his one begotten son to lead the wild into the ways of the man. Follow me. Eat my flesh and my flesh. What is he saying? What is he telling you? That music is satanic, man. In the album, in Biggie's album, Ready to Die, one of the songs is called Suicidal Thoughts. And in that song, Biggie tells you, when I die, I want to go to hell. He doesn't care anymore. He's ready to give up his life for this rap thing. He's telling you he has given his life up to Satan. He's telling you in the songs. But see, and this is the thing when you are bewitched by these artists. It's hard. It doesn't matter in what language I speak. If you are bewitched by them and you worship them, you will never believe anything negative about them. Not really. And even if you believe it, you will still love them so much and worship them that you will still go back and listen to their music. So many times, they have told us who they were and had become. Really, who they really were and what they were and had become after signing that contract. They are not just look like you and me. They are involved in some very dark things to create that music and create the sort of reaction within you that makes you worship them and see them as gods. Some of them had to give up their lives for it, like a Tupac or a Biggie. Just like Tupac, the album that came out shortly after Biggie's death foreshadowed his death. It's called Life After Death. Right after he died, I think even just a few days after he died, the album Life After Death comes out. And on the album cover, you see Biggie by a hearse. And when you look at the plate of the hearse, it clearly says B-I-G, hearse. What more proof do you need? The very last song on the album, Life After Death, is called You Are Nobody Till Somebody Kills You. And on the intro of that song, here comes Diddy quoting a passage from the Bible. That's what Satan does. That's what Satan does. These guys are agents of the devil. Do not listen to that music. Do not listen to that music. You have no idea what it does to you spiritually. Look at our generation. I was born in 96, by the way. I'm 30 years old now. And our parents, are the generation of the Diddies and stuff. Tupac's generation and all of that. The ones that were, born in between the mid 60s and, early 70s. What was their legacy? And here I'm talking about hip hop. Those that were rappers at that time. What was their legacy? Nothing good. The next generation was worse than them. And it's only been worse and worse and worse. Musically speaking, and just, in terms of society as well. It's hard to understand sometimes why some of these artists are so powerful, so influential, that they become gods or demigods in that music industry. Many of us come to the conclusion that it's talent. No. When it comes to lyrics or just being an MC, a rapper, Tupac, for example, was not the most talented. I would say that even someone like Nas was more talented than Tupac when it comes to rapping. The skill of rapping, MCing. But when you listen to Tupac's music, it's a lot more convincing. And no, don't tell me it's not just passion. Yes, Tupac had a lot of passion. But it's not just passion. And this is the spiritual part that I'm talking about. What made Tupac's music more powerful is that it was more spiritual. It was more charged spiritually. Same thing with Biggie Smalls. Those guys, I think, since they gave up more than other artists, Satan allowed their voice to be more powerful. They paid the ultimate price. They gave up their own lives. That's why when you listen to that music, it's like they bring you into a different world. When you listen to a Tupac, when you listen to a Biggie Smalls, it's like you're listening to a God speak. It's not just them speaking. They are charged with so many things. Just like I said, in that song, Hail Mary, in that intro, it's the voice of Satan that I heard, man. These guys collaborated with spirits. And here's the thing. Because you will always come across people who would say, oh no, I was there in the studio and nothing like that was going on. But this is what you have to understand. Whether they knew it or not. But when it comes to giving up their lives, I definitely believe that they knew it. Well, how can you not know? You did it. And they say it, they show it. You know what? No, I'd actually take that back. Yes, they knew. They knew what they were doing. If Satan was speaking through Tupac, as I felt in the intro of that song, Hail Mary, Tupac knew. Tupac knew. He had done whatever he had to do for that to even take place. He created the atmosphere. I mean, he consumed the weed that allowed him, the amount of weed that allowed him to open himself up spiritually for Satan to be able to come inside of him and speak through him. Same thing with Biggie. Their music is more charged with whatever spirit it is that helped them create those specific songs. Be very careful with their music. With any of this hip hop. Let's stop thinking that this stuff is just entertainment. It is not. It's not just entertainment. Since it's been created and became commercial and something that satanic music industry felt that they can benefit from and use to push their agenda, hip-hop music changed my parents' generation, our generation, and the generation of the younger people coming after my generation. The way that they think, the way that they dress, the way that we and they dressed, talk, walk, thought. It's the music. It's the music. Even the way that we look now with all of these tattoos. The way that women dress. More promiscuous. It's this whole thing where Satan wants to, reverse everything. Everything needs to be upside down. That's what he likes. That's what he wants. He wants to mock God's creation. And we need to remember that Satan was, he was an angel. And what did he preside over? What was the reason why he was in heaven in the first place? It was the music. He was in charge of the music. Worship. I've said enough, and I'm going to end this video here. But before I do so, I dedicate, this video to God because He is the one that inspired me to do this. And I do this to be obedient to God. I talk to you as if you are someone who is a big fan of these rappers or Tupac or anybody in that music industry. I speak to you as someone who was just like you, you know. I know what it is to worship these guys. I know what it is to love that music. Hip hop was, it was my daily bread at some point, but it has done nothing for me that was positive. In a way, it destroyed me, but I couldn't see it at the time. I had to give my life to God and truly follow Him and give Him my heart for real. Not just so I could get something from God, but to really give Him my heart and make Him the most important thing in my life. For Him to start revealing things. Some of the things that lied, in that music, for example, that I used to listen to. And this is just one of the aspects and areas of my life that God is revealing. The dangerous spiritual things that were hidden in the things that I participated in and used to enjoy, like music, like worldly music. So I pray for all of you listening. If you are a big fan of Tupac or any artist in that music industry, I pray for you, your soul and your spirit, so that God may touch you, speak to you as He spoke to me, and reveal some of the things in that music so that you may leave it behind and follow God, because only He can save you and me. Thank you.